Hi, I'm Diane Lucas, and welcome to Music 101. Music 101 is created to empower music itself and legendary icon in the music industry. And as usual, my partner in crime, Mr. Mick, the Doctor of Digital.
Hey, Dad, how you doing this morning?
Fabulous, fabulous, like you, Mister.
Oh yeah, doing well, rocking and rolling.
uh, we should be grateful for everything that we have.
Amen, brother.
Yes, yes, yes. And today, another week, another episode of Music 101 from Mr. Meek. What will be our topic for today?
Well, we have my favorite blues artist. That's the Howlin Wolf. That is Chester Arthur Burnett, but better known as the Howlin Wolf. He's a legendary blues musician whose impact on the genre is still felt today. He's born in Mississippi in 1910, well known for his deep, raspy voice and commanding stage presence. And he was a pioneer in the electric blues movement in the 1950s, 1960s, and a very big influence on a lot of later musicians. That's how I first heard about him and dug into the background and found the Howlin' Wolf.
Howlin Wolf. Let's give him a big, big hand. Thank you so much, Mr.
Oh,
Howlin
yeah.
Wolf, for sharing your talent to the world. Until now, it's still echoing and echoing. I hope our generation will continue your legacy. So, Mr. May, can you tell us a bit about Howlin' Wolf's background and how he got started in music?
Oh, yeah. It's a very interesting story. He has a very unique sound, and that was shaped by his experiences growing up in the Mississippi Delta, where he was exposed to a lot of traditional blues and gospel music. And he began way back when in the 1930s playing harmonica and singing in local juke joints and street corners. A juke joint is a little place on the side of the road. People used to go and dance and listen to good music. He developed his very own unique style, powerful, emotive vocals, and his ability to convey the struggles and hardships of everyday life through music. And that's what I think people resonated with. And so originally he recorded at my favorite studio, Sun Studios in Memphis, Tennessee. So if you have never been there, you got to go. It's great. Known for a lot of early rock and rollers, but also the Howlin' Wolf recorded there. So his association with Sun Records and Sun Studios in the early 1950s is really critical. So Sam Phillips, the founder of Sun Records, was instrumental in recording Howlin' Wolf. And he often said that the Wolf was his favorite blues artist. And you hear his music and you can tell why. He recorded in the Sun Studios between 1951 and 1952. Some notable songs were Moanin' at Midnight and How Many More Years. And when he recorded and released those, he got some way wider recognition as a result. So those are two early tracks, Moanin' at Midnight and How Many More Years. Now, what's interesting about this whole arrangement is that it was unusual. Sun recorded things and then also sent them to Chess Records, and that was the Chess Brothers in Chicago. So every time Sam Phillips had somebody he thought was worthwhile, he would send them off to Chess in Chicago. And these early recordings helped establish his powerful, distinctive sound, growing reputation in the blues world. And this is, of course, at Sun, which would be also very famous for later rock and roll pioneers, Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, all kinds of people, Roy Orbison. I mean, it just goes, the list goes on and on. But the Howlin' Wolf was before there, 1951, 1952. And he mostly then became famous because of his association with Chess Records. And to see his influence, well, there's a band called the Rolling Stones, and they covered his music as well. That's how important that he is. They covered Little Red Rooster from their album 1964. It's a blues standard credited to arranger and songwriter Willie Dixon, but the song was first recorded by Howlin' Wolf 1961 in the Chicago blues style, and that vocals and slide guitar, key elements of the song, is part of that Delta blues tradition, and the theme is derived from folklore. So he had some earlier songs that were very similar to that. Little Red Rooster appear in songs such as the Banty Rooster Blues by Charlie Patton, and also a great version, Memphis Minnie. If You See My Rooster. So we had a male and a female version. And then, of course, the Rolling Stones with Little Red Rooster. So really important, this whole connection between both Sun and Chess Records in Chicago, famous chess label in Chicago.
Definitely, definitely one of the legendary icon in the music industry. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Mick, in the 1950s, 60s, racism is rampant. What do you think Mr. Wolf did cope up with those struggles?
Well, I think you hear it in his songs, and I think that's what people relate to. They can relate to that he's talking about some very ordinary things and very distinctive, raspy vocals, gruff style. You know, when you hear the Howlin' Wolf, you know it's him immediately. I mean, it's so distinctive. And since he had this sort of really down to earth and earthy style, people could understand and relate to the everyday struggles of what he had went through. And you hear it from the blues artists because they're so pure in what they say and it's so distinctive. I think this is where people can say it's like blues is not an unhappy music, even though it's called the blues, but it allows people to cope and it allows people to get through the day. And that's what I think is a great tribute to the blues genre, and this specifically, I think, the Howlin' Wolf.
Yes, the Howlin' Wolf. What makes Smokestack Lightning such a significant song in the blues
Yeah,
genre?
that is such a cool song. Yes. So Smokestack Lightning was that signature growl that the Howlin' Wolf had, and a powerful delivery. And the lyrics are really gripping as well too. So this was recorded and released in 1956, and it has that signature growl and powerful delivery. It reached number 11 on the Billboard R&B chart, and as lyrics tell a tale of a man longing for his lost love, and it has a driving rhythm, and it has that urgency and desperation in it. And what Wolf was able to do is to convey emotion through his music. So he says in the lyrics, well, I woke up this morning, sun shining bright. I got a feeling that something ain't right. Boy, I know I've had days like that. I looked out the window. What did I see? Smokestack lightning chasing me. Well, I took off running. I didn't know where, but I'm running from something. I don't know what I'm running from. Danger, I'm running from fear. Smokestack lightning chasing me. And he says, I hid in the hollow, which is definitely a kind of a southern phrase, but I hid in the hollow, I hid in the tree, but I can't hide from danger. It's chasing me. I'm running from trouble. I'm running from strife. Smokestack lightning chasing me. Well, he keeps on running to the day I die. I'm running from danger. I'm running from the sky. I'm running from trouble. I'm running from fear. Smokestack lightning chasing me. Now, this is a unique blend of traditional blues and electric blues, and this is one of the really important things about the Howlin' Wolf. His use of electric instruments, such as the guitar and harmonica, gives his music a whole new level of energy and intensity, and that's what's so critical about that late 40s, early 50s period, and that resonated with listeners. And this song's popularity helped establish Howlin' Wolf as a major force in the blues scene, paving the way for other electric blues musicians because primarily it had been acoustic up until that time. But then his influence just went way beyond the blues of the South. He was a mentor and friend to many other blues musicians, including Muddy Waters in Chicago, B.B. King, and he had this key role in the development of the blues scene in Chicago, where he was one of the first blues musicians to move to the city from the South and help to establish as a hub for blues music. So everyone in Chicago, the Windy City, you guys know this. But from the early to mid 1960s, there was people like me growing up. We didn't originally hear this music, but we heard it from somebody else. And specifically, this song, the Yardbirds. They featured Smokestack Lightning as part of their live act. And it's a blues standard, open to varied interpretation. And bands from the Yardbirds to Soundgarden all stamping their personal imprint on that song. Eric Clapton says that the Yardbirds' performance of the song was the group's most popular live number. It's really interesting as well, too. They played it almost every show, and sometimes it could last up to 30 minutes. So it's like, wow, they really stretched that song out. That one version that's in recorded, it's also on Yardbirds UK debut album, Five Live Yardbirds, and they also played it on Rave Up with the Yardbirds. But Howlin' Wolf himself has commented on this in their version of the Yardbirds and called it the definitive version of his song. So that's quite a tribute as well. So really big influence. And when I'm saying a lot of us were growing up and we would hear it originally from, say, bands like the Yardbirds or Cream and started digging it, at least people like me. So where did this come from and who recorded it first? And that's how I found out more about that particular song. Great song.
Great song, Mr. Holland. Thank you so much for those blues. So, how does Spoonful showcase Howlin's Wolf raw, raw vocal talent and storytelling ability?
Yeah, that's another really great song, and that's also been recorded by others. So Spoonful is really interesting because that was released in 1960, and that has that raw vocal talent, his ability to tell a story through music. And the lyrics of Spoonful, filled with very vivid imagery and metaphor, creates a sense of mystery and intrigue. And of course, there's a hypnotic rhythm and intense guitar riffs that make it a standout track in Howlin' Wolf's repertoire, and the ability to connect with the audience on this very deep level. The music is raw, it's honest, authentic, and his performances were often described as intense and emotional. So if you look on YouTube, you can see some of his performances and you can see that. They talked about the struggles and hardships of everyday life. Audience could feel, see, and understand. It's a prime example of Howlin' Wolf's ability to tap into the emotions of his listeners. Its enduring popularity is a testament to his lasting impact, and it goes way beyond and for other musicians as well. So Eric Clapton and Cream has really done a lot with this later on. It's a blues song written by Willie Dixon, first recorded in 1960 by Howlin' Wolf. And it's also been reinterpreted by others, and other great versions of this too. Etta James and Harvey Fuqua had a pop and R&B record chart with their duet version of Spoonful in 1961. And of course, some of us, when we first heard it, it was by the 1960s group, the Cream. So we went back and said, okay, let's try to look at it. But it's really interesting because these are the kind of songs in the blues genre that get reinterpreted back and forth. So there's an early song by Papa Charlie Jackson, All I Want is a Spoonful. And he was from the Mississippi Delta region. So again, kind of related. And then also he had slide guitar. It's a little different version, but he also recorded 1940s, 1950s. There's also kind of a related song too by Luke Jackson, 1927, Cocaine Blues. Now, I wouldn't know anything about that kind of stuff, but I've heard of it. He was a guy that was from Virginia. He also recorded a similar version. And then once we get to the Howlin' Wolf and others, we start seeing that, oh, some other bands and musicians were recording. Charlie Patton, 1929, recorded Spoonful Blues. So it kind of gets kind of transformed and mixed around by a number of different people. By the time we get to the Howlin' Wolf version, okay, let's talking about the spoonful. And what is it? It's a metaphor for pleasures, which can be and has been interpreted as either sex, love, or drugs. But here's some of the lyrics that really are key. It could be a spoonful of coffee, could be a spoonful of tea, but one little spoon of your precious love is good enough for me. Men
Yes.
lies about that spoonful. Some of them dies about that spoonful. Some of them cries about that spoonful. But
Yeah.
everybody fight about that spoonful. I mean, there are some really rich lyrics there. It can be interpreted a number of different ways, but I think you can feel the passion from it. It's something that people are desiring and wanting. But that spoonful has been recorded by a number of people in different ways over the years, but a great version by the Howlin' Wolf. Spoonful.
Yes. Spoonful of happiness, people.
Yeah, sure.
Spoonful of success. A lot of spoonful of gratitude for everyone. So, before we go, Mr. Mick, I want to plug in my Food 101 merchandise. Please do
Cool.
purchase one of my merchandise. People, name it, and we have it. Accessory pouch, coffee mug, and Bentomax, and a lot more. So please do purchase Food 101 merchandise. This is products of our Food 101 of our fourth season already with Chef Alessandro, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about street food, people. Italian street food. So, Mr. Mick, How has Howlin' Wolf music influenced the blues genre?
Yeah, there's so many people that have been influenced by him. And for myself, I've been saying people growing up in my generation, we started hearing his music through others. So, I mean, some names have mentioned, I've said Eric Clapton and Cream, but of course, there's some others as well, too. The Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix. So he has had an influence on a number of different people. And some specific songs can be mentioned as well, too. But some of those artists, as early blues musicians from America went to England, what happened is that the young English kids started playing these songs, Spoonful, Killing Floor, and others, and they started doing their own versions. But that's the influence that he's had, and that's why I'm saying, looking back into the kind of the history of the blues, you start seeing that it's a ongoing tradition from the Delta through Sun Studios, through Chicago, and then all the way across the pond to England as well. And then Americans like us were starting to hear, oh, that's kind of our music, but given back in a little different way.
Yes. So how has this how what sets of Killing Floor apart from other songs in Howlin' Wolf repertoire?
Yeah, good question. Because in addition to Smokestack Lightning and Spoonful, Killing Floor is another example of his groundbreaking work. It was released in 1964, and this is about the time that some blues artists were going to England. So 64 and or so, those young English kids and guitarists are starting to listen to what he had to say. So it's a driving beat, powerful vocals that showcase his unique style. Killing Floor tells a story of a man struggling to make ends meet. A lot of people can relate to that. And that song's intense energy and emotion make it a standout track in his discography. The song uses the killing floor, the area of a slaughterhouse where animals are killed, that's what he's talking about, as a metaphor or allegory for male female relationships. So every time you have a little problem, listen to Killing Floor. He says in the lyrics, down on the killing floor. That means a woman has you down. She went out of her way to try to kill you. She at the peak of doing it, and you got away. You know, people have wished they were dead. You've been treated so bad that sometimes you just say, oh, Lord, have mercy. You'd rather be 6 feet in the ground. So his ability to convey the struggles and hardships of everyday life, and everybody can relate to this because, of course, you know, there are all kinds of problems between relationships. But that key factor was his enduring popularity of being able to put this in the form of a music so people could relate. Talked about themes of poverty and justice, but those powerful vocals and that emotional delivery makes his music feel so authentic and so relatable. So Killing Floor is a prime example of Howlin' Wolf's ability to tap into the emotions of his listeners. And that enduring popularity is a testament to his lasting impact on the blues genre. So English group Led Zeppelin, again, saying a lot of those English guitarists started hearing the American blues artists who had been touring England and listening to the records. And they had a song called The Lemon Song, which is really kind of infamous in Led Zeppelin's repertoire. But Led Zeppelin actually performed Killing Floor live 1968, 1969 when they first started getting going. And they really was a basis for their Lemon Song. They recorded a 1969 album, Led Zeppelin 2, recorded in Los Angeles when the band was on their second concert tour of North America. And it was introduced by Robert Plant, and he told where we got it from. But again, this is so common in the blues genre, and what Led Zeppelin had done was kind of making it their own, because that phrase about the lemon, to squeeze my lemon till the juice run down my leg, which is a famous song we all listen to, Led Zeppelin, that was actually on Robert Johnson's Travelin' Riverside Blues. And Johnson himself probably borrowed this as well from a song recorded in 1937, the same year, called, not surprisingly, She Squeezed My Lemon by Arthur McKay. So that kind of phrase then gets picked up by Led Zeppelin later. And that song also references Albert King's Crosscut Saw. So, I mean, a lot of this has really been adapted and readapted and remodeled and what have you. So when Led Zeppelin started picking up at what they did is actually made it their own and took parts of that song and made their own the Lemon Song out of it, but it really comes from Killing Floor. Eventually, Howlin' Wolf then gets co-credit as the Lemon Song because people were starting to say, well, wait a minute, maybe you borrowed too much Led Zeppelin. Didn't you take too much from him? And so eventually, this is one of those things that was controversial, but they started making it a little bit more of a credit to say it was actually Howlin Wolf and getting co-authoring credit for it. Now, this is an interesting song in so many ways. Not only Led Zeppelin, but also Jimi Hendrix performed Killing Floor early in his career. He had vocal performances with Curtis Knight and the Squires, 1965, 1966. And then also, when he goes himself, Jimmy goes to England and got a little bit of recognition because he wasn't getting that much recognition in the States. September 1966, he performed the song. He sat in with Cream. Killing Floor was also in the set list of the early form Jimi Hendrix Experience. It was often a set opener. But the difference was Jimmy again made his own, played at a much faster tempo, different rhythm guitar and bass line, and it was recorded a number of times. October 66 in Paris, March 67 BBC studios, and of course, those of you who enjoyed, as many of us has, the Monterey International Pop Festival, 67, he also played it there as well. So important song. Like a lot of blues artists and blues songs, it kind of gets adapted and readapted and taken up in different ways by different people, but they kind of try to make it their own as well. So interesting song.
Interesting, people. So, how do you considering Ian Hunter or Mr. Howlin Wolf to be your next Ian Hunter?
That's another, yeah, more to write. Is that I get your point? That's exactly what you're saying. Yeah, so I mean, I think he's so important, and not only Sam Phillips thinks this is considered his favorite blues singer, it's mine as well too, because his music has had a huge influence, and it's kind of like we looked at it, me and my generation backwards, at least I did, because we were hearing this music, but I was always very curious, where did it come from? So I heard it through, say, the Rolling Stones and Cream and Jimi Hendrix. So when I heard them, I also knew somebody else had written it before. So I think it is really important to acknowledge the Howlin' Wolf because he inspired all of these later artists that I grew up with. But I did the research and say, okay, this is where there's an influence on Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and all these later artists.
Yes, speaking of Ian Hunter, Mr. May, can you please plug in your books?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Daniel. It's very kind of you. Yeah, so a couple things on Amazon's Burning America in the Best Interest of the Children, and also On Track Ian Hunter. They're available on Amazon, and I've mentioned before working with another project, another book, and that's about chipmunks, so-called Voice of Woodstock. So that'll be coming out at some point. Working on that, unbelievable all the things that he has done. But also, of course, check out the podcast, the Doctor of Digital podcast, and of course on Facebook, the Idea to Author Coach. I help any everyday people, quote Sly and the Family Stone, CEOs, leaders, entrepreneurs break through their obscurity through written presentations, building credibility and authority. So always available to help and like to chat with anybody who's interested.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Mick. Because if you support him, more episodes, more books to come. For sure, Mr. Howlin will the next. Howlin Wolf. So to sum up what I was talking about, how did Howlin Wolf use of instrumentation contribute to the development of electric blues movement?
Yeah, it's really important. So he was one of the first to use the kind of instrumentation that was the electric blues movement. So 1950s and then until 1960s. And a lot of artists then followed him. His use of electric guitars, harmonicas, and other instruments helped create a new sound that was both raw and powerful. And since he experimented with different instruments, that inspired generations of blues musicians to push the boundaries of traditional blues music, which had been acoustic based and from the Delta. So his influence on the blues genre can blend all these different musical styles and traditions, incorporating elements of gospel, country, and rock and roll, which was again starting about the same time. So it was a unique sound, both roots based and modern. The blending of that style has inspired many other blues musicians to experiment with different genres, create their own unique sound. So blues, rock and soul, R&B, he left this indelible mark on the music world. So let's hear it for Howlin' Wolf. Good man.
Good man, very well said, Mr. Mick. And yes, Howlin' Wolf was a towering figure in the history of blues music. With his deep, gravelly voice and commanding stage presence, he's become one of the most influential blues singers and guitarists of the 20th century. And thank you so much, Mr. Howlin Wolf. I hope our
Thanks for everything.
generation will continue your legacy as we are talking about you. So, Mr. Mick, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Daniel, my friend. Be well.
Be well and God bless. Mr.
God
Mick,
bless.
catch you next
Deus
week.
Volt.
Bodyguard
Got it.
people, see you soon.